Good afternoon. So we are going to get back to working today. So what does that mean? I don't know. Something about doing work. Well, the first thing I did was I fixed option 2 for our helper batch script. It was doing stuff we didn't need to do anymore, so I got rid of it. So, not a problem. And the other stuff we've got today, so the first thing I'd like to do is I need to figure out what materials we need, and I want to make sure they exist and they're in the proper folder. And there's a few different items that we're going to need. We're going to need a lit shader for 3D opaque objects. We need a lit shader for masked 2D objects. We need a lit shader for translucent 2D objects. I guess we need a lit shader for 3D masked objects and lit shader for 3D translucent objects. So masked, translucent. Do we need opaque sprites? Yeah, so I guess a lit shader for opaque 2D objects. We need an unlit shader for masked 2D objects, an unlit shader for masked. This will be translucent 2D objects. And I guess we also need an unlit shader. Let's just be complete. I don't think we're going to need unlit shaders for 3D objects. So we need a place to put all of them too. So that's probably enough for our materials. So let's start actually making them. So we'll boot this thing up and make sure we got all of our shaders that we need. And it is Saturday. What a day. So let me take a look at what was going on the other day. Let's see. More bitey hand-painted normals. Bitey and fat sack normals. Oh my god. Let's see. I guess we don't need this UI stuff in here anymore, do we? So why don't we just disable that in our editor. Alright, so what we want to do is we want to get a good folder for the materials that we'll be using for the game. Alright, so I think we're going to throw everything under graphics and then sprite materials. And so what do we got? What do we got here for this? This is just a masked lit material. And I guess if we have sample additional textures, additional slot index. Alright, so we're basically also going to want to have our normal maps in here. And I think that just plugs into normal. And let's just throw this with none. It requires a texture. Base flat and normal map. Let's see what else we've got going on here. Let's actually grab this and let's actually copy it. So we're actually going to have a new folder here. We're going to have like placeholders. And what should this be called? This will be Dashkin empty normal map. And let's just drag this in here. So I think that's pretty much all we need to do is just do something like this. Let me just pop open a different Well, I know that Adam in his level has something with normal maps in it. What are these? So this is the fat sack light test with material fat sack. So he's got the normal, just like this, but he doesn't have his UVs hooked up to the texture sample. All right. He's got a 0.5 roughness. All right. Well, maybe we should add a roughness. And I don't see anything else we have to worry about. Let's see. Should we have specular maps? I don't think so. Alright, so we'll set all of our stuff up kind of like this. And that's opacity mask. Alright, cool. Alright. So, let's make sure to save this. And let's go back to our graphics and sprite materials. We don't need this terrain material, because we're not using that. We don't need a dummy sprite. Well, we actually should use a dummy sprite, but we should grab a... We need a dummy material is what we need. So why don't we grab the breathe material? We're going to duplicate that over into placeholders. And we're going to have a Dashkin placeholder sprite character sprite. And we'll just chunk that in right here. Alright, so this will be, it's not the entity sprite material, it's the, oh, we should call it what it is. It's the masked lit sprite. So it should be Dashkin masked lit sprite. Let me check real quick if we have any references inside of our import stuff. I think it's inside of tools, inside of import tool customization. So we've got like textures and all this sorts of stuff. Was it the effect import? Yeah, it's game graphics, sprite materials, translucent unlit sprite material. Alright, so I gotta remember the effect import. And we're gonna want to add the default material for character import. I'm writing these tasks down over here. Alright, so and get rid of this one. And we're going to need to duplicate this, and we're going to do Dashkin. Let's do translucent lit sprite. So what we need to do here is we want to make this I should probably fix that. I don't know what this thing does. Alright, so the translucent lit sprite needs to be a translucent surface. So translucent, default lit, two-sided, all that. So it's going to use the opacity and not the opacity mask. Cool, so that'll do what that does. Alright, let's see. Screen space reflections. Why don't we just put them at defaults until we... Let's see. Screen space reflections. So per pixel translucency. Well, we're not going to be doing translucent stuff for much of anything because shadows don't get rendered onto them. So we probably don't have to worry too much about getting that perfectly correct. Alright, so we've got masked and we need an opaque. So Dashkin opaque lit sprite. Dashkin opaque lit sprite. So again, let's take a look at this. We're going to want opaque. Alright, cool. So we got all three of those. So we need the unlit versions of these. I'm just gonna delete all this stuff here. Oh man, stuff's using this? Translucent unlit is using this. Translucent unlit. And everything uses this. So why don't we do Dashkin translucent unlit sprite. And since it's not lit, we don't need normals, because that would be silly. So this should be translucent and unlit. So we don't need these texture samples. So we don't need any of that stuff. And let's also grab a placeholder texture in here. Let's grab this one, this barrel explosion texture. It's pretty good for just a placeholder. So let's copy this. So, I think we've got that in there. Placeholders. This will be Dashkin placeholder effect. So what we want to do is just throw this in here. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. So this is the sprite material. This is the translucent unlit sprite. Let's just make sure that we got everything. Orbit pitch? What is this? Oh, it actually saves these things? Interesting. Not super valuable. Alright, so the unlit sprite material is there. We need an unlit one for opaque and masked. So opaque, let's see, opaque. Gotta love all the nastiness that comes in there. All right. So we don't need opacity in there at all, so we can take out the multiply function and just leave this just like that. And for this guy, we need our Dashkin masked unlit sprite. So we just make this masked. And that looks about correct. Forgot how to drink water. Alright. So we got the masked material in there. So we got masked lit, masked unlit, opaque, translucent. Okay, so we need the materials for 3D objects, for lit 3D objects. So let's see, what are we using any 3D objects right now? Anyone? I don't think so. I mean, the closest thing is like these boulders or whatever. And we could take a look at like the basic materials that we could have for something. And just nothing super crazy. So why don't we make, we're gonna need the materials, so we might as well just see what we've got here. Let me see, got a message. I think somebody was unhappy with their textures there. That's gonna be Adam getting super frustrated at something, leaving middle fingers and textures for me. So are there any default materials that I should grab here that are... Looks like just a whole bunch of, you know, there's stuff here that people have been messing with, but nothing too incredible. Like, this doesn't even go anywhere. So why don't we just make like a very basic, I'll just grab like this white boulder and throw it inside of our graphics stuff. So we're going to need another type of material. These will be the object materials. So this is where we're going to throw our boulder. Did I click the wrong thing? I said copy here. Obviously I clicked the wrong thing. And we got to do all this dance with source control because that's just what we do. So this is, we're going to want an opaque. I guess everything's kind of opaque, right? Well, not necessarily. So this will be Dashkin opaque object. And these are our base materials for our things that we'll be applying. So they're just kind of a starting point. So let's take a look here. So I think we'll have normals. I don't think we'll have ambient occlusion maps. Look at that ridiculousness. Throw in 0.5. We definitely need to have the texture samplers. So we need the texture coordinates. And we're going to want kind of a placeholder default texture, and this one's actually not bad. So why don't we just throw that in our placeholders? We'll call this Dashkin placeholder object. It should probably be called surface, to be honest. So why don't we call it that? Why don't we call it placeholder surface? Because I think that's a more accurate description of what the texture actually is. So again, what we're going to do here is have our UVs popped into our shader here, and this one we're going to want Dashkin empty normal map, and we're making sure all this stuff is set up like we want. So base color is in there. We need the vertex colors, so why don't we grab these multiplies in here. And we don't have any opacity, but we can just go ahead and kind of hook these things up regardless. Cool, so our vertices will affect what our thing looks like. And that's what we want it to look like. So we got the vertex color set up properly, multiplied out. Cool, so not too bad. Let's go down the list here. This is default lit. Used with static lighting. Material instances can be used with static lighting. Resultant shaders requiring support static lighting be compiled, which will increase shader compile times and memory usage. We probably actually want that on everything. Why don't we go back and double check that we have the ability to do that. So the unlit stuff, of course, is not going to use that, but the other things, let's make sure that we check the boxes. Alright, so we've got this. Now we need the masked object on this. So let's go ahead and make sure we save all these things. So let's duplicate this. We're going to call it Dashkin masked object. So let's pop that open. It's going to be masked. So we've got our mask going on. We should probably have something that actually has some, you know, alpha in it if we're gonna have a masked thing. So why don't we go grab a better texture for this? And I think a better texture probably exists inside of our material stuff that Adam's been playing with. Probably like maybe the tree? So let's take a look at this tree. Yeah, this is looking pretty decent. So we call this Dashkin placeholder placeholder surface 2. And we'll go ahead and drag that in for our texture. So we can see it is actually masked properly. Let's make sure that this has the correct things on it. Mask, surface, default lit, all the normal stuff. Alright, that looks good. So we need a translucent one now. Dashkin translucent object. So the important thing is masked objects can cast shadows. I think translucent objects can cast shadows as well, but they cannot have shadows cast upon them. So kind of a pain in the butt, to be honest. Alright, and that's just translucent. We'd already hooked up this stuff. Should a translucent object have... Yeah, if it's... These are all lit. So I don't think we need unlit objects for these sorts of things. But yeah. Okay, so we got our translucent objects. Let's see. We want to now try to clean up these sprite materials. So let's see. The default sprite material is used by like stuff. So we want to re-import our effects. I think. We're gonna have to do a little bit of cleanup. So this should be masked lit sprite material, so we want Dashkin. Can I just drag this? No. Well, and how come it doesn't show up? Like, we've got all these different materials, but we can't replace it with anything? Alright, well, let's just get rid of the references if we can't. It just doesn't do anything? It's like, okay, yeah, cool. Masked lit sprite material. We should be using the Dashkin masked lit. Sprite material. Masked lit. And this is why it's important for us to get this stuff actually organized, because very quickly why are these looking all weird? Probably because lighting needs to be rebuilt or something like that. I mean, I really wish that I could just replace all these things with the material, but it's just not letting me do it. Can't do it. It's just so dumb. Like, I can't drag anything in here, I can't do anything. Like, just the replace references just doesn't work. So, good job. Good job there. So we just gotta go through and do all the things. Alright, nothing uses it at least. Let's see. Opaque lit. Get rid of that. And this is used by just about everything. So can we replace with these or anything? No. Of course not. Well, I can just manually replace these. Probably the easiest way to do it is to go to our flipbooks. And all these should be the translucent unlit. Got them all here. Translucent because they are effects. It's kind of why it's important to keep a clean house on all these things, so we can actually, you know, get it all working without having to do a ridiculous amount of everything. Like I hit the save all button and it didn't actually save all. Because I'm trying to close stuff. It's like, oh, do you want to save? I'm like, I hit the save all button. I thought I saved already. Alright, cool. So now everything should be, we've got our proper materials for our stuff. We've got some placeholders which we can use for all these, and same thing for 3D objects. And we can actually start moving stuff into, you know, nice organized folders and things like that. What's going on here is there's not real lighting in this scene, except for like right there with that point light. So yeah. Alright, what do we need to do? We need to change the importers so the importers use the proper materials inside of them. So let's open up Visual Studio. And let's throw these texts over somewhere where we can easily modify them. So I think it's inside of utils, and then we have like global utils, and that's where we're sticking all of our global variables in C++ that we need access to. Alright, so we're going to need a static const f string. We're going to call it G. Oh, what are these going to be? These will be opaque lit object material. We're going to want our masked lit object material, and it's better just to get these things kind of set up already. This will be translucent lit object material. The same thing for sprites. And we'll have this stuff for the editor. This will be material paths for editor plugins. And we've got our editor plugin which imports a whole bunch of stuff. And then we've got everything else for unlit, and good. That should set all that up. Now we need to actually add them over here. If you're wondering how to make constant static variables in C++ that are inside of a class, that can be kind of annoying if you're not exactly sure. Basically, you just need that namespace on the front. So what are our... That's what it was looking like before. Alright, so it's going to be /game graphics sprite materials. So it's going to be like kind of like this. So it's opaque, mask, translucent. So it's going to be opaque and then translucent lit sprite like so. I think it's just unlit. Yeah. And we'll do this in code here in this one spot, and then we can reference it across other parts of our project. Baked, masked, and translucent. Alright, and we need to go to our object materials now. So it should be like object materials and then Dashkin opaque object like so. Translucent object and masked object. Here are all of our material paths. So these are the default material paths. So we can throw those over. And instead of referencing stuff like this, I can just do and this is going to be translucent unlit sprite material. Like so. Let's make sure we check this stuff out. Alright, so that should definitely set our materials. And we need to make sure to set our materials inside of our character import tool. This is effect, and we need the, is it texture import tool? Probably. So let's look for create flipbook 4. No, it doesn't look like that's the right one. Is it character importer tool? Create flipbook 4. Here we are. So we need to set this thing up a little bit differently. So let's take a look at these two files. Well, it looks like what we can do is we need this sort of thing going on here. And this is going to be translucent unlit sprite material? No, it's going to be the masked lit sprite material for this one. Because these are all of our characters and they should be masked sprites. And let's see, our collision source should be each frame custom collision. I think that's the only difference. It's the only thing I see there. Alright, so that'll do for our imports for all the things. Awesome. So why don't we test it out? So we need to test out importing some effects and also test out importing a character. Let's see who we've already got on deck for importing. Because I've already got a few things in here. Let's see, in terms of effects, I've got all of those effects. Cool. And in terms of characters, well, we can always just import Fatsack's. Just import one of Fatsack's things. We'll see, has anything changed with Fatsack recently? I'll just pop open the character's Fatsack history. It's like that was 6.3, so that was earlier today. Fatsack's materials. And the crouch in and dig. Alright, so we want to make sure we don't import the dig. So why don't we just mess with the roll. Cool. See, do we have any compile errors? No. So just have to wait for this to actually do what it does. So what we should be able to do is go to our Dashkin tool, effect import. You got your new PC actually fully working. What? Nice job, Synachron. Also, good afternoon.